Good evening and welcome to Chicago Tonight. I'm Paris Schutz. Brandis Friedman is on assignment. On the show tonight,
we've listened, and that does not mean everyone's going to be happy.
Democrats push forward with a new map meant to give their party a leg up in elections to Congress, despite some public and Republican frustration with a secretive process.
They said they did an investigation. They said my claims were meritless.
The latest on the Blackhawks scandal after John Doe, now known to be Kyle Beach, comes forward.
When you see the faces and faces of different ages, then you realize you could be there.
How Pilsen residents celebrate Day of the Dead. That's the next stop in our In Your Neighborhood series.
Once it's gone forever. We can't put it back.
Conservationists and concerned citizens are behind a last-ditch effort to save a patch of rare prairie near the Rockford Airport.
What you're buying is a cultural artifact. You're not buying art.
Why a local art manager says art collecting is about more than just finding something pretty to hang in your home. The mystery grubs that ate their way through a local park are no longer a mystery. We're ready to start naming names. And after a humiliating 35-point loss to Tom Brady and the Buccaneers, can the Bears and rookie quarterback Justin Fields bounce back against the 49ers on Sunday?
And Paris, as you mentioned, I'm in Pilsen as part of our Chicago Tonight In Your Neighborhood series. Now, Pilsen is in Chicago's Lower West Side community, and this neighborhood has been busy preparing for the Day of the Dead. We're actually inside the National Museum of Mexican Art taking a look at their latest exhibition. Now, this neighborhood has also been battling with gentrification. We speak with the local organization working to secure affordable housing. And right now, we send it back to you.
All right, Joanna, we'll look forward to all that. And now to some of today's top stories. Chicago public health officials report an increase in vaccination rates on the city's south and west sides. CDPH says 75% of all Chicagoans ages 12 and older have now received at least one dose of the COVID-19 vaccine. The department set a goal of reaching 77% of Chicagoans 12 and up to start the vaccine series by the end of the year. 80% of residents 12 and up in West Elsdon on Chicago's southwest side have started the vaccine series as of this week. Calumet Heights and Garfield Ridge reached 70%. Washington Park had the highest vaccination rate since last week, and West Elsdon reached an 80% increase, as we said. President Joe Biden says he's reached a deal on a framework for his Build Back Better plan. The latest proposal amounts to $1.75 trillion, down significantly from his first request of $3.5 trillion. The plan would include funding for universal preschool, child care, and climate change initiatives. But it drops many key Democratic priorities, from paid family leave efforts to lowering prescription drug prices. The proposal would rely on funding from new taxes, including ones targeting millionaires and billionaires.
After months of tough and thoughtful negotiations, I think we have I know we have a historic economic framework. It's a framework that will create millions of jobs, grow the economy, invest in our nation and our people, turn the climate crisis into an opportunity, and put us on a path not only to compete, but to win the economic competition for the 21st century against China and every other major country in the world.
And Chicago's Fraternal Order of Police and the city met again in court today, this time over the FOP's motion to stop the Lightfoot vaccine mandate. The judge said a ruling will be issued in this case no later than mid-morning on Monday. And up next, Amanda Vinicky with the latest from Springfield, so stay with us.
Chicago Tonight is made possible in part by Alexandra and John Nichols, the Jim and Kay Mabey family, the Polk Brothers Foundation, and the support of these donors.
Democrats in Springfield are scrambling to pass what they see as important initiatives in Illinois' last scheduled legislative session of the year. There's movement, but perhaps not enough to get it over the finish line. Amanda Vinicky joins us now from Springfield with the very latest. Amanda, what's going on?
Well, Paris, there's a temporary lull in floor action right now, at least here in the House. The Senate getting back underway, but really, I think scramble is the most appropriate word for what is happening here under the Capitol dome. Is going into this 3-day fall veto session. Democrats, who control, by the way, every facet of Illinois state government, had a couple of priorities, and really the big one, putting out a new congressional map. You see, it is up to state legislators to draw boundaries for states' U.S. House districts. And there's pressure from D.C. that Illinois really gets this right, given that it is a blue bastion for them, and Democrats need to win every possible seat if they want to maintain control in Washington. And judging from past voters' behavior, well, this new proposed map does give Democrats a pretty great opportunity in Illinois to do just that, with a solid chance at 14 seats versus 3 districts designed to advantage the GOP. Now, this map also creates 2 so-called Latino opportunity districts versus the 1 district now that has a majority of Latino residents. Maps consultant Frank Calabrese says currently many Latino communities are divvied up into too many congressional districts.
The north side of Chicago, Bensonville and Des Plaines, Addison, West Chicago, Hanover Park and Bartlett, and Elgin. The proposed 3rd congressional district, it unifies these Latino communities.
Now, this latest map, however, made public at about 10:30 last night, meaning that there was little time for the public to review it. And Chicagoan and community leader Claire Duggan says it seemed that the entire process was designed to quash public input.
I received an invitation to attend the 9 o'clock meeting at 12 minutes after 9 this morning. I had to do that. I had to email multiple staffers and submit witness slips. So I just want to put it on record our concern as a grassroots organization that this process is making it quite difficult for individual citizens to be involved.
Republicans, of course, frustrated too. GOP State Senator Jason Plummer sought to have the chair of the Senate Redistricting Committee, Omar Aquino, recuse himself. That's because Aquino is a potential contender for that new 3rd congressional district. And Plummer says that given Aquino's role in drawing the boundaries, that would cast a dark shadow if, in fact, the state Democratic senator does decide to run. Plummer also says that Southern Illinois residents didn't have an opportunity to give their input on the map, and that frustration boiled over, as you're going to see in this clip from that morning.
You canceled every hearing south of Chicago.
Sir, we are working in collaboration with the House, and they had hearings as well. And so this is a collaborative process. And so we have had a number of redistricting hearings throughout this entire state. And folks can, because we're on virtually, can always participate at hand. Again, I have already adjourned the committee. The committee is adjourned. Thank you.
What a joke.
Now, State Senate President Don Harmon said that this is the final plan. He says that given the significant work that went into balancing these districts, that material changes to it aren't likely.
In the end, we're going to pass a map, and no one is going to be 100% happy with it. That is the nature of the legislative process. That is the nature of compromise. We've had many, many hearings. We have taken more public input than I think we have ever before in a redistricting cycle. And we've listened. And that does not mean everyone's going to be happy and people still won't be disappointed. But I hope that everyone feels represented for the next 10 years in the General Assembly and in the Congress.
Except this might not be the final version, because there is real doubt that there is enough support for it to pass here in the Illinois House. Some Latino legislators upset with how those lines are drawn, including fears that there aren't enough Latino voting age residents in that new district. Now, also some suburban legislators bothered that this map pits 2 Democratic incumbents, Marie Newman and Sean Casten, against one another. Now, meanwhile, there has been some progress on another priority for this session. That's an incentive package meant to lure automakers transitioning into manufacturing electric vehicles.
In a very short time frame, they're making decisions on where to locate new facilities, retool existing facilities, and where to locate suppliers, which in themselves means thousands of jobs potentially throughout the state. So this package will simply incentivize the EV industry to locate in Illinois.
An executive from Rivington, that's the Bloomington-based electric truck startup, it says that the company's biggest challenge is having to import lithium-ion cells from China, and the company is trying to get cell suppliers to locate nearby.
Make no mistake, Madam Chair and committee members, these talks with cell suppliers are ongoing now. As I testify, Rivian is in active discussions with 3 potential suppliers, all of whom have asked how Illinois compares to other states in terms of a business-friendly atmosphere.
So the governor's administration really wants this to get done today, but union pushback could stall that plan. And with the holidays coming, it's unlikely that the General Assembly will have an opportunity to come back in the year 2021. If the maps don't get done, well, that would mean they would have to come back in January and pass new congressional boundaries. That would be tricky, though, Paris, because by that time, candidates are going to want to start campaigning and collecting petitions, and it really could put them in a pickle should there be any legal challenge to an eventual map. With that, we'll be following the action, especially as things get going in the Senate. Back to you.
A lot of action down there. Okay, Amanda, thanks very much. And we're just days away from Halloween, but immediately after that comes the Day of the Dead. It's an important holiday throughout much of Latin America. Despite COVID concerns, celebrations are coming together in Pilsen, which is a community just southwest of Chicago's Loop with a substantial Mexican population. As part of our Chicago Tonight in Your Neighborhood series, Joanna Hernandez and producer Acacia Hernandez spent the day in Pilsen. Joanna joins us now. Joanna, what else can you tell us about the holiday, also known as Dia de los Muertos?
You said it correct, Paris. Very good. And how beautiful is this altar right behind me? And I have to tell you, Paris, El Dia de los Muertos may seem like a sad holiday or a sad day, but it's the complete opposite of that. It's a time where people come together to remember their loved ones. It's essentially a time where people celebrate life and death and come together with these beautiful traditions. Now, you're about to meet a woman who took it upon herself to make a tall altar to honor those who died in her community. Take a look.
And you want to be remembered, not forgotten, not because someone dies, he's gone forever. So to realize that death is part of life.
Isabel Hernandez used 178 milk crates to create a 15-foot altar with 250 pictures of people and animals that once lived.
I love giving, and for me this was the moment that I was able to give something to all the people that have died. So for me, it was a tribute to them.
A tribute that is filled with the favorite items and foods of those who have died. A tradition that marks the beginning of a 2-day celebration observed on November 1st and 2nd. Altars, also known as ofrendas, are decorated with sugar skulls, marigold flowers, and sweetbread, all believed to guide the spirits to the altar to be welcomed by their loved ones.
The fact that I look like them, like they look like my father, like my older brother, it tells me that they're here. They might not be here physically, but in some way I carry them with me. And we believe that during the Day of the Night, they do come and visit us, not physically, but spiritually.
Julio Cesar Velázquez, the owner of Escarmosa USA, has hundreds of Mexican arts and crafts from all around Mexico. It's a one-stop shop for finding items for Day of the Dead celebrations.
Whoever passed away as a little kid, you offer them one of this.
Velázquez took over this store 5 years ago and says he's taken what he learned from his late father and brother to keep the culture and traditions alive as the neighborhood changes.
I feel really proud of being able to transfer them my culture, to teach them about who I am, what the store represents. It not only represents an item, it's not only the products that we sell, but the culture itself.
Just 2 stores down, Artemio Casas is baker and manager at Panadería Nuevo León. He has been preparing special bread for the holiday.
Bueno, se empieza a preparar desde empieza octubre, están pidiendo pan de muerto.
The bakery has been a staple in the Pilsen community for 49 years, and every year they make more than 3,000 pieces of Day of the Dead bread. we got an inside look at what it takes to make it.
Me emociona a mí porque es pan especial y se hace una vez al año. So eso es para mí muy bonito.
After the dough is ready, he starts to mold it in different sizes.
Muchos usan el pan pequeño para el Día de los Muertitos, de los angelitos, de los niños, y ya para los adultos el pan grande.
Casa sets the bread to cool for 2 hours in a refrigerator, and then it's ready to decorate with colored sugar, and then off to bake in the oven for 45 minutes.
Mucho trabajo. Y team.
You're a team.
Yeah, mi hija y mi señora.
This is the size of the tombs.
Father Adán Sandoval has been preparing for months to throw a 2-day Day of the Dead event where people will be able to decorate mock tombs outside the church.
A little space where they come together as family to decorate, to celebrate in a tomb. That's a wonderful, wonderful thing.
This is the second year St. Procopius Catholic Church is transforming its outdoor space into a cemetery. Locals are given a place to honor their loved ones and remember them with the community.
It's a moment of prayer. You know, you see people laughing, crying, coming together. I see it as a spiritual experience.
With hundreds of Chicagoans lost to the coronavirus, Father Sandoval says this year's festivities feel different.
We all experienced death so close to us this past year. So celebrating death this year absolutely takes a different tone.
A time of reflection that sparks a conversation about those bittersweet moments of being human, opening a space to talk about those loved ones that are forever in our hearts.
And now the free event will be taking place outside St. Procopius Catholic Church on Saturday and Sunday from 12 to 9 p.m. We're told there will be food and an Aztec performance and tons of activities for everyone to enjoy. Now, Paris, I send it back to you.
Thanks, Joanna. The Chicago Blackhawks are in turmoil, and not because of the team's current winless record. On Tuesday, General Manager Stan Bowman resigned. This after an investigation revealed former video coach Brad Aldrich allegedly sexually abused a former player, and that team executives were informed and failed to take immediate action. Last evening, the survivor at the center of this case revealed himself to be former first-round draft pick Kyle Beach. He told Canadian sports network TSN he believes the players, coaches, and staff all knew, even though many said they didn't.
Word spread pretty quick. I do believe that everybody in that locker room knew about it because the comments were made in the locker room. They were made on the ice. They were made around the arena with all different people of all different backgrounds, players, staff, media in the presence.
And joining us now with more are Sean Black, Chief Projects Officer with the Illinois Coalition Against Sexual Assault, and Ben Pope, Chicago Blackhawks beat reporter at the Chicago Sun-Times, who has been covering this story. Welcome to both of you. And Ben Pope, I want to start with the latest. Team captains Jonathan Toews, Patrick Kane made some comments last night about this that have been a bit controversial. Fill us in on the latest.
Well, General Manager Stan Bowman was one of those team executives who was allegedly involved in the cover-up, had to resign when this came out. But both Kane and Toews, who have certainly come up and been stars in the organization for a long time under Bowman, defended him, saying that they thought that he was a good person, that this action described in this doesn't match the Stan that they knew. And in Toews' case, went even further, saying that he doesn't know how, quote, deleting him can really solve the problem here. So very sort of strange defense of him, considering all that we've learned about Bowman's role in covering up the sexual assault 11 years ago. And that's certainly been making waves, Toews being the captain for a long time now, and Kane being someone who said he knew Beach pretty well. Certainly surprising to see that from them.
Right. Of course, those two players were around back in 2010. And Sean Black, is someone who tracks these cases, your reaction to that investigation that came out this week from Jenner and Block?
Well, it's very disturbing. It's tragic. I feel incredibly sorry for Kyle Beach in this case. Unfortunately, it has all the hallmarks of a lot of sexual assault cases. People trying to cover it up, not believing the victim right away, and causing trauma for the victim or traumatization for the victim. It's also not unusual at all for the victim to wait, to come forward for several years in the public eye. So it has all the hallmarks of a very usual sexual assault case.
Right, and we should mention there are multiple lawsuits that are open here, and this was an investigation that was launched by the team as a result. Ben Pope, you heard Beach say he thought everybody knew. Taves and Kane say they didn't learn until after Aldrich was gone. Where's the truth here?
Well, that's the difficult thing to figure out. Two players from that 2010 team, Brent Sopel and Nick Boynton, both of which are no longer in the NHL, have said in interviews earlier this summer that they knew and that they believe everyone on the team knew. Meanwhile, Kane and Taves and Brent and Duncan Keith, who's still in the league in Edmonton, say they did not know. Taves said that he learned at training camp the following year. Kane said that he didn't know until this started coming out this summer. It's hard to track down exactly who's right, who's wrong. We may never know. The investigation focused mainly on the behavior and knowledge of the team executives who are involved more in the handling of it and didn't go deeply into the players. I believe they interviewed 14 players, and all but those two, Sopel and Boynton, said they didn't know about it. But who's to say whether they're lying or trying to protect themselves or whether they're telling the truth? And that's certainly a disappointing mystery that we still don't know the answer to yet.
Right, and certainly Beach is very adamant on what he experienced back then. Sean Black, when you think of sexual assault, you don't always think about man-on-man, especially if the victim here is, an athlete or physical. How common are cases like this? And we should also mention involving a coach, a mentor.
Well, most sexual assault cases, the vast majority of the perpetrators are someone known to the victim. So it's not unusual that it's someone the victim would know. It's not unusual that it's someone who holds some sort of power over the victim, whether it be a family member, coach, or a teacher, anyone of that stature. So, is the most common, when you think about sexual assault, you often, you think about man against perpetrating a rape against a woman, or you think about man abusing a child. But this just goes to show you that anyone can be a victim of sexual assault. Anyone can be a victim, a professional athlete. In those moments, you can be that victim, and it's traumatizing, and someone might freeze. And sexual assault is always the fault of the rapist or the perpetrator in this case, and it can happen to anyone. And really the key is to believe that person when they come forward and help them recover from the trauma of sexual violence.
And this investigation doesn't necessarily say the executives that were apprised of this didn't believe it. They just didn't do anything until after the Stanley Cup. Let's read a statement the Blackhawks sent out after Beach came forward last night. Quote, "It was inexcusable for the then executives of the Blackhawks organization to delay taking action regarding the reported sexual misconduct. No playoff game or championship is more important than protecting our players and staff from predatory behavior." Ben Pope, we mentioned Bowman gone. The former team president, John McDonough, is long gone, and he's really been mentioned here as someone that also should have taken action. Is this the last of the fallout here for the Blackhawks?
Well, from the Blackhawks standpoint, all of the executives are gone at this point. They also dismissed Al McIsaac, who is also part of that meeting. Around the league, Joel Quenneville was the Hawks coach at that time, is now the Panthers active coach. He met with NHL Commissioner Gary Bettman today, and we still don't know yet exactly what his future is. Winnipeg Jets GM Kevin Cheveldayoff was an assistant GM with the Hawks at that time, and we don't know what his future yet involves either. But the Hawks, even though they have gotten rid of all the executives involved, still have a lot of work to do to regain the trust of the community. Their last two home games have not sold out. It's the first time in 13 years that that's been the case, and there's been a ton of frustration online, in person, everywhere within the fan base and among Chicago sports fans in general, just how much the organization betrayed them and how one of their greatest triumphs is now tainted by this incident. So the Hawks still have a lot of work to do to rebuild, even though they have at least gotten rid of those who are most responsible.
Yeah, you talk about that 2010 Stanley Cup victory that was so celebrated by fans. And let's actually hear what Beach had to say about the fact that Aldrich was allowed to celebrate that and take the Stanley Cup home.
And then when they won, to see him paraded around, lifting the cup at the parade, at the team pictures, at the celebrations, it made me feel like nothing. It made me feel like I didn't exist. It made me feel that I wasn't important. And it made me feel like that he was in the right and I was wrong.
Sean Black, Kyle Beach re-traumatized here, and he talked about how this kind of ruined his life, all the spiral that he went down. Take us inside the mental anguish of survivors that live with being sexually assaulted.
Well, it's an incredibly traumatic experience. The trust that you had in a person is completely broken. You know, not only often in Kyle Beach's case, not only by his rapist, but then the trust he put in the management of the Blackhawks, his teammates on the Blackhawks, all that was busted. And, you know, recovering from that is a long process. Everyone does it differently, but all you can do is try to provide help and services to someone who comes to you with this information. It is incredibly traumatic to them, and the recovery, there's no right or wrong recovery time, and you just have to work with them on that.
And Beach says he really can't begin his recovery until he came out and this went public, and now he is on that road. All right, our thanks to Sean Black and Ben Pope. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
Thank you for having me.
And some breaking news this evening as a rare piece of land in Rockford may be saved from some development at the time being. More on that in a second. Most of us know Illinois was nicknamed the Prairie State back in the 1840s when it was an endless flat landscape of native plants and grasses. But today what remains as actual prairie is less than 1/100th of 1%. Among that tiny fraction, just 20 acres are the especially rare dry gravel prairie type, and 1/5 of that number is tucked inside the property of the Chicago Rockford International Airport. The patch of land known as Bellbowl Prairie was set for demolition beginning next week as part of an expansion of the airport's cargo operation. But as of this afternoon, an 11th-hour campaign to convince the airport authority, which would not allow WTTW news cameras to film on site, to find a way to save both the prairie and the jobs appears to have earned Bellbowl Prairie at least a few months of reprieve. Producer Erica Gunderson has the story.
We know the prairies and natural areas do things for us. You know, we're humans, but we're not apart from nature. It's a part of our, you know, our evolution as well that we're destroying.
Harlem Hills Nature Preserve is a patch of gravel hill prairie in Loves Park, Illinois. A rare piece of ecological history, the 94 acres are protected from development because the preserve is owned by the Illinois Department of Natural Resources.
From the roadside, a prairie may look like just a weed patch, but just a little bit of time out in there interacting with those plants, season to season, things are so much different. Different plants bloom, set seed, and wildlife species come and go.
But just 10 miles away at the Chicago Rockford International Airport, tiny Bellbowl Prairie does not enjoy the same protection. The 5-acre remnant dry gravel prairie nestled inside airport property represents 20% of the prairie left of its kind in Illinois. It was just days away from being demolished for an expansion of the fast-growing airport, but a last-ditch campaign by conservationists and citizens to save Bellbowl Prairie seems to have earned the postage stamp prairie a stay of execution.
Conservation organizations across the state and even across the country are really trying to generate awareness and to advocate for the Rockford Airport Authority to reconsider their design, not to change their minds about a new development, but to reconsider their design so that it saves the high quality prairie that they own, that they save Bellbowl Prairie.
Today, the airport announced that it is redesigning the portion of the expansion plan that affected Bellbowl Prairie. Construction that was set to begin on November 1st is now suspended until at least the spring of 2022. Among the concerns that conservationists raised was the fate of endangered plant and animal species, like the rusty-patched bumblebee that forages at Bellbowl Prairie.
We have record of the endangered rusty-patched bumblebee at Bellbowl. So if you think about the rare, you know, a bee being rare, if it's attracted to plants that are in a rare ecosystem, that just compounds its problems.
Tyler Pellegrini, a restoration ecologist with the Natural Land Institute, says Bellbowl's ancient structure means relocation of the prairie isn't a viable option.
You've got your seed and your organic material, plants, gravel, soil, but those insects and microbes that have been in there doing their work for 10,000 years too, you know, there's no way to recreate that.
In a statement to WTTW News, airport officials say they followed all the rules, including public notices and meetings, throughout the planning process, and that a 2019 environmental assessment received a finding of, quote, no significant impact from the Federal Aviation Administration. Still, the conservationists say that it's possible for the airport authority to save the Prairie and continue with the expansion.
A team of architects and engineers that took a look at what the proposed plan was and presented an alternative plan that basically reroutes the road and moves the buildings and says and allows for all of the development to happen that is proposed, but saves the Prairie. So the development and the Prairie both happen.
And they say that though revamping the plan will take more time, it's worth the effort.
While it may seem like a small piece of prairie, just a small acreage, there's so little of it left in Illinois that we can't afford to lose any part of it. And it's important to our generation and to future generations that we save what we have, because once it's gone forever. We can't put it back.
For Chicago Tonight, this is Erica Gunderson.
And WTTW News reporter Patty Wetley has been following the Bellbowl Prairie story as it has developed. You can read her comprehensive reporting, including an update on a lawsuit filed by the Natural Land Institute to stop the demolition, on our website. That's WTTW.com/news. And Patty Wetley will join us later in the program with an update on the infestation of grubs at a local park, so stick around for that. And also to come on Chicago Tonight, construction on an affordable housing project is underway in Pilsen. We hear from the nonprofit behind the development. Mixed medium artists unite for Burgart's Fall Review. We have a preview. And after a humiliating loss to the Buccaneers, the Bears could be without head coach Matt Nagy, there he is, during their 49ers match following his positive COVID test. But first, some more of today's top stories. The Civilian Office of Police Accountability finishes its investigation into a confrontation between a black woman and a Chicago police officer on North Avenue Beach, although the office did not release its findings. The altercation happened in August when Nikita Brown walked her dog along the lakefront after midnight. It was captured by Brown's phone and the officer's body camera. He asked Brown to leave the beach area, which was closed. After exchanging words, video shows the officer grabbing her wrist and arm. The two struggled until Brown dropped her phone. Brown's lawyers say this is a case of racial profiling. The officer was put on desk duty while the agency conducted the investigation. COPA announced today that it has shared its report with Superintendent David Brown. A former Chicago Park District employee is facing felony sexual assault charges. 32-year-old Mauricio Ramirez was ordered held on a $500,000 bail this afternoon. Chicago police say Ramirez abused a 16-year-old girl who at the time was a lifeguard while he was her manager. During a bond hearing this afternoon, prosecutors detailed multiple occasions in which they say Ramirez sexually assaulted the victim between July and September. This marks the first criminal charges filed in the Park District's widespread sexual abuse and harassment scandal under former Chicago Park District Superintendent Mike Kelly. This is all first reported by WBEZ. Kelly, of course, resigned earlier this month. Facebook is getting a facelift, or at least it's just changing its name. The company announced today it will now be known as Meta, though the social platform will still be called Facebook. CEO Mark Zuckerberg says the name change reflects the company's growth, moving beyond social media. He says the company is working on developing the, quote, metaverse, a more immersive and experiential platform. This comes as the company faces scrutiny in recent weeks for its impact on teens and on the political process. And leaked documents show that the company put profits over the spread of misinformation and hate on its platform. The mystery grubs that ate their way through a park on Chicago's North Side have been unmasked. WTTW News reporter Patty Wetley was the first to report on this story and joins us now with the latest. So, Patty, they feasted on Wells Park. No one knew who exactly they were. Who are they?
Yeah, well, hello from Grub headquarters here.
Grub Hub?
Yes. They are the larva of the June beetle. So we now know who done it. But even though we've identified the culprits, which it could have been one of any number of a bunch of white grubs out there, we still and probably never will know what caused this just crazy infestation, this explosion in the grubs population there at Wells and Winnemac Parks.
Although, as I understand, the latest is investigators believe it has something possibly to do with the weather conditions.
Doesn't everything these days have to do with bizarre weather conditions? So yeah, you know, it was a perfect storm of a mix of conditions that likely led to this. But you know, these grubs are common around the city, people's lawns and in other parks. Just this sort of infestation is just beyond the pale.
And very briefly, what's next for Wells Park?
Well, they were out there. I got multiple messages. The Park District was out there treating the affected area today. Then next week, they plan to start fertilizing and reseeding the area. People will be asked to kind of steer clear for a while, and then they will come back with another round of reseeding in the spring and try and keep intense activity off there until the grass has a chance to establish itself.
Well, if this were a sci-fi movie, the grubs would probably come back regardless. But this is real life.
Oh, God, we'll see.
Let's see how this works. All right, Patty, thanks so much.
Thanks, Paris.
And you can read Patty's full story on our website. That's WTTW.com/news. And now back to Joanna Hernandez, who has spent the day in Pilsen as part of our In Your Neighborhood series. Joanna.
Thank Paris. We're now here with Guacolda Reyes, Chief Real Estate Development Officer with the Resurrection Project. Thank you for joining us tonight. Now, I want to start off. The Resurrection Project started about 31 years ago to help fight gentrification. Can you tell me what the battle was like then compared to now?
Well, I guess in early 1990, when the Resurrection Project started, the battle was again slum landlords, absentee landlords, deteriorated properties, unsafe apartments, right? And now it's a little bit different. Today we see new investors coming into the community, buying properties, renovating them, and then of course increasing the rents. So that's what we are fighting today, but I would say that today the fight is even more important than 31 years ago.
And construction started earlier this week on your newest affordable housing development in Pilsen, Casa Durango. What will that look like?
Oh, we are so excited and so proud. We're bringing to our community 53 units of affordable rental housing. There are going to be 2 locations, 1850 South Racine. We're going to have 37 apartments. And the second one is 2010 South Ashland with 16 apartments. 1 bedrooms, 2 bedrooms, 3 bedrooms. It's going to have laundry facilities in the buildings, elevators, a room for the bikes. I mean, brand new, renovated, and affordable.
And I have to ask, at the beginning of this project, people had concerns about the sizing of the building and wanted more family units. Is that something your team seeks to prioritize now?
Of course, and that's one of the reasons that we increased the number of 3 bedrooms. Originally, we were only going to do 6 3-bedrooms. Now the final count is 10 3-bedroom apartments, 21 1-bedrooms, and 22 2-bedrooms, because that's what the majority of our families are asking for.
And we see displacement happening all across Chicago. How are organizations like yours helping families who can't compete with increasing rents or staying here in the neighborhood?
Well, I think one of the key actions from the Resurrection Project has been to provide affordable housing from the beginning. We started with homeownership opportunities in Pilsen back in 1990, and then later on we started with the rental rehab. And we continue to provide those 2 resources, but also we provide financial wellness, which financial counseling services, immigration services, and leadership development, because we believe that it's not just about affordable housing. The idea is to be able to provide a comprehensive resources to our families so they can stay and strive in our community.
And you said you've been a resident here for about 30 years. You know, close to that, what would you like to tell your community now? I mean, we've touched a little bit about gentrification. It's undeniable we're starting to see all these changes. What would you like to tell them?
Well, I think the fight and the energy today is to continue to provide decent, safe housing for our families that have been in our community 30, 40 years ago when there was this investment. So why not to give those families the opportunity to enjoy the Pilsen that we have today with beautiful restaurants, with improvements with the schools, the parks. You know, it's an effort that it has been taking quite some time, but it's rightfully so that now the long-term families of our community need to take advantage of that and enjoy it and feel proud of living in this community.
Well, thank you for joining us tonight.
You're
Thank you.
welcome.
And Paris, stay tuned. In a bit, we'll talk with the curator behind this Day of the Dead exhibition. But first, we toss it back to you.
All right, Joanna, thanks very much. And up next, turning art collecting into something more than just hanging pretty pictures in your home. But first, we take a look at the weather. A local art manager believes that everyone deserves to have art in their lives, whether they're making it or buying it. Arts correspondent Angel Ito explains how he's working to make art more available with a preview of his latest art show, The Fall Review.
What you're buying is a cultural artifact. You're not buying art.
Alan Burgart is looking to bridge the gap between emerging artists and emerging collectors with an overall goal of making art more accessible.
I really try to specialize in nurturing the emerging collector. So a lot of the people who are purchasing art from Burgart, they've never bought art before. Everything here is framed, it's very easy to buy. What sets Burgart apart is that we work directly with the artist to help create a full body of work. Every artist that we work with is compensated on every sale, obviously. We don't sell anything on the secondary market, and everything here is original, never before seen, and they're all works on paper.
As an art manager, Burgart says works on paper, particularly 16 by 20 inches, are less intimidating.
I always talk with emerging collectors about how wonderful it is to collect works on paper. They're a great value compared to more expensive canvas work. They're also much less risk and more approachable, plus they can go anywhere.
The latest works on paper by emerging artists will be on display this weekend in the Fall Review. Each of the 6 artists will be showing full collections like Icky.
I did a series of taxi drivers. I grew up in the Caribbean, and taxi drivers kind of make their living from tourism. So most of those guys were always like heroes, in a sense.
Now, as a mixed medium artist, over time, Icky has learned to embrace the mistakes.
I left them out on the floor where I was working, and water came in and drenched them all. And instead of allowing the mistake or allowing it to mess up the day, I just completed the pieces.
Other featured artists include Myron Laban, a muralist who will be displaying smaller sketches that go with his You Deserve to Be Happy series, promoting mental health awareness.
Behind me is Laura Cathwood, and over to my right is James Sternfield. They're both technically brilliant. They're working very deep within just pencil and paper, and I always talk to collectors about how it's so wonderful to collect works on paper, specifically pencil works, because you can't trick a pencil. Christy Lopez, in her studio practice, she focuses on an internal dialogue, mainly within herself, and in exploration within her own mental illness. So Lefty Out There's work is, he utilizes his trademark squiggle, and he works from an improvised standpoint where he'll just start in one corner and just keep going, very similar to Keith Haring. He normally sells his canvas work out of Los Angeles and London, and it's so wonderful that we have accessible artwork from such a highly emerging artist such as Lefty Out There here in the city of Chicago.
While the art world may be ever-changing, Burgart says his goal will always remain the same.
Working with artists is, it's my purpose, and it really helps me become myself. And when I can see an artist grow, it helps me grow.
For Chicago Tonight, I'm Angel Ito.
You can check out the fall review tomorrow through Sunday at the Congruent Space in Westtown. Tickets are free with an RSVP. Pieces range from $150 to $500, going as high as $4,000. More details on our website. And now we check back in one more time with Joanna Hernandez, who spent the day in Pilsen as part of our In Your Neighborhood series. Joanna.
Now, thank Paris. We're now here with Cesario Moreno, Director of Visual Arts and Chief Curator of the National Museum of Mexican Art. Thank you for joining us tonight. Now, I want to start off. This is the museum's 35th Annual Day of the Dead exhibition. Tell us about it.
So, every year we have this wonderful annual exhibit that celebrates life, and every year there's usually something special about it, right? It's a unique exhibit every single time. This year, in the first room, we are focusing on COVID and those people that we've lost in the past 2 years to COVID-19.
And what do you want people to take away from this exhibition when they walk through it? There's so many beautiful and colorful exhibitions in each room.
Yeah, I think the most important thing is the Day of the Dead is a beautiful celebration from Mexico, but it really is a celebration of life that everybody can adopt. It really is a helping, healing way to grieve and remember people. And you don't have to be Mexican, you don't have to be particularly religious. It is just a great way to remember those people who are still a part of our family, even though they may not be physically with us anymore. And it's a way of keeping their memory alive and keeping them into future generations.
And how does this year's exhibit compare to other years? What would you say it has felt heavier because of COVID?
It has definitely been felt heavier. I see people in here who are looking for photographs of their loved ones in the COVID memorial ofrenda. And people come in here, I think, because we've been isolated for so long. We gather together, we think about people that we love, and I think that it's not just an art exhibit. I think people really understand that Dia de los Muertos has little to do with art, and it has a lot more to do with being alive, being mortal, and obviously hanging on to our traditions and our ancestors.
And what do you love about Day of the Dead? I know we talked a little bit before about you've traveled to different parts of Mexico and got to experience how small towns have celebrated El Dia de los Muertos. What do you love about it?
Probably one of my favorite things is seeing how different or how unique it is in different regions. I've been to Chiapas, Oaxaca, Michoacan. I've also been to Los Angeles. And everybody in the Mexican communities in different spaces really does this in their own way. And that's key. The other thing at home I love to do is to create an ofrenda because it really gives us time to think about our family and where we come from and where we are.
Well, thank you so much for joining us tonight
Thank
and
you.
sharing this. Thank you. And that is all, Paris, for tonight. I send it back to you from Pilsen.
All right, Joanna, thanks very much. And up next, we preview the Bears matchup against the San Francisco 49ers. But first, a look at some events happening around town this weekend. After last week's thrashing by the defending Super Bowl champs, the Bears are leading the league in one statistical category. That is the number of players on the COVID list. And that list also includes head coach Matt Nagy, who may be off duty this week unless he tests negative. What does all this mean for the upcoming matchup with the San Francisco 49ers? Joining us is James Big Cat Williams, former offensive lineman for the Chicago Bears from 91 to 2002. Big Cat, always great to see you. So this one was a debacle from the word go. Who's to blame here?
Well, I think everybody had a part in that game. You come out and in the first quarter, you look horrible. You look at an offense that comes out, the first two plays are a tackle at the line of scrimmage by a guy that's unblocked. Second play is a safety blitz that nearly gets your quarterback's head knocked off, and then it's an incomplete. Punt return for 43 yards. They go right in and score after a 15-yard run and a couple passes by Brady, and a pass interference. So it reared its ugly head early, but they were just, you script the first 15 plays of a game as far as offense goes. So for you to come out and run a toss to the short side of the field and not be able to get everybody blocked, for you to have two guys blocking one guy and a safety running free, that's a problem. Those are things that have to be cleaned up. It's players, it's coaches, it's everybody.
That's definitely a breakdown, and there was just no chance after all that. Justin Fields this week and receivers said they admitted they're not on the same page. What do they have to do to get on the same page?
Well, I think you heard Fields talk after the game, and let me say that young quarterback coming out, being the first guy on the podium, still having his pads on, not avoiding anyone, and talking about how, I'm not going to let this break me down. I'm going to use this to help improve my game. I'm going to use this to make me stronger. And, these are the things that you want to hear from a young quarterback. These are the things that you want to hear from a leader in your locker room. I know a lot of guys after a bad performance like that would have gone back to their locker. They'd have scooted back in it so nobody could find them, or ran to the showers real quick. So for him to come out and, tell you, look, I'm not used to this, but I'm going to work hard to make this better. The Zoom meetings that now the receivers and himself are on as far as trying to clean things up. I mean, these are the things that you need to do.
Yeah, you definitely get the sense that he's got the mental makeup to really be resilient. And certainly he didn't play well, but it's not all his fault. There was no blocking for him. As you mentioned, the scheme didn't make a whole lot of sense in the very beginning. And now we know that Coach Nagy is in this COVID protocol. If he doesn't coach, it's going to be the special teams coach, Chris Tabor, on the sidelines. How does that impact the way you go about the game?
Well, I don't think it shouldn't impact him too much. Tabor is there to make the big decisions. Do we go for it on fourth down? Are we going to try an onside kick here? And, you would have to imagine that it's going to be a collaborative effort between not only him, but him and a couple other coaches. But, there are things that he's going to have to figure out for the first time. We don't know what his special teams duties will be, but I'd have to imagine he should be able to take care of his special teams duties and carry on as the interim head coach.
We all know the McCaskies have never fired someone mid-season like this, or at least rarely. Do you think Nagy's on the hot seat?
I do believe he's on the hot seat. When you talk about what the organization went through as far as Trubisky was concerned, and now you have Fields come in and you get him in the games, and, nothing has seemed to change. So you've got to imagine, yes, between now and the end of the season, that seat's got to be kind of warm.
All right, well, the Bears face the 49ers this weekend. They're struggling, too. How do you assess this matchup?
They're two basically even-matched teams. You look at the 49ers, they run the ball well. They have a few injuries on offense, so, they're a little depleted. The Bears are the same way. And defensively, the 49ers are pretty good. They have some spots where they can be exposed, but, we're talking about the Bears being able to go out there and run the ball, but not only run the ball, make things happen from the run, make things happen off the run. And if they can't go out there this weekend and do it against the San Francisco 49er team that, is around on the same level that they're on, the next couple of weeks are going to be really rough.
And at what point do you pull Justin Fields, perhaps worried about how this all impacts his development, or do you just keep him out there no matter what?
I think him being on the field is the best learning experience for him. We talked about the first play as far as, even when he came to the podium, he said he did not see the safety blitz. That's something that he has to see.
Right.
I'm sure all week they talked about, look, Todd Bowles likes to blitz young quarterbacks, and that's exactly what they did from the opening snap of the game.
There's no learning like doing. All right, a fearless prediction for this weekend.
All right, I'm going to give the Bears the advantage this week, and we're going to go 17-14. I just think Herbert will be able to run the ball. they've got to make a few adjustments. I'd like to see some screens, some boots, some naked plays. And if they're able to do some of those things, it'll be a close one, but they might be able to pull it out.
Slugfest. And, you know, the Bears do have a history of coming back after these really bad defeats over the last couple years and getting some big wins. All right, let's hope that happens this weekend. And our thanks to James Big Cat Williams. And a note for next week, the Bears play the Steelers on Monday Night Football. Monday, November 9th, that is. So Big Cat will preview that matchup a week from Saturday on Chicago Tonight, Black Voices. And we're back to wrap things up right after this.
Chicago Tonight is made possible in part by Alexandra and John Nichols, the Jim and Kay Mabey family, the Polk Brothers Foundation, and the support of these donors.
And that's our show for this Thursday night. Don't forget to stay connected with us by signing up for our daily briefing. And you can get Chicago Tonight streamed on Facebook, YouTube, and our website, WTTW.com/news. You can also get the show via podcast and the PBS video app. And please join us tomorrow night at 7 right here for the Week in Review. And now for all of us here at Chicago Tonight, I'm Paris Schutz. Thank you so much for watching. Stay healthy and safe, and have a great evening.
Closed captioning is made possible by Robert A. Clifford and Clifford Law Offices, a Chicago personal injury and wrongful death firm that's proud to serve its community through pro bono legal services.